Hello, everyone, and welcome back for season 2 of the Wellness on Purpose podcast. Here at the Wellness on Purpose podcast, we appreciate that there is no linear path along one's wellness journey and understand how easy it can be to get caught up in the latest health trends found on social media. Our intention is to provide you with impactful, educational, and realistic information to help you progress on your journey to live wellness on purpose now and for future generations. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are joined by Tiffany Nicholson-Smith, who is an international teacher, an Ayurvedic practitioner, and a lover of life. She is known for bringing her clarity, abundant energy, and aspiration for revealing truth into each and every one of her offerings. Tiffany is also the founder of Rasa Ayurveda, which is one of Canada's largest Ayurvedic apothecaries. Rasa Ayurveda brings us the gifts of ancient wisdom that is high vibrational, love-filled, and accessible to our community. Without further ado, let's allow Tiffany to inspire us in how we can incorporate different Ayurvedic tools into our everyday life to progress along our wellness journeys. Good morning, Tiffany. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Marissa, for having me and for welcoming Rasa also onto the podcast. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's jump right in. Let's tell our listeners who you are, what Rasa is. Let's start with first you as an individual. Tell everybody who Tiffany is.
That's a funny question. Well, actually, I grew up in the area, so I feel really touched as well, to come on the podcast that you've headed here at Joanne's. I grew up out near Stony Lake, and then I left the country for quite some years, most of my adult life, actually. In only a few years, I made it back to sharing and offering and teaching here in Canada, and especially in the Peterborough area. So if I were to define now, who Tiffany is, dependent upon what I'm offering or sharing now, there's a lot more to it than that. I really now, find myself to be a vesseldom of offering the gifts of yoga and meditation and Ayurveda, especially. And I suppose that might be what we're here to talk about today.
Absolutely, yes. So Rasa, this is your company, an Ayurvedic company. So let's talk a little bit about what that is and what even is Ayurveda so our listeners can know a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited because Ayurveda is finally, I would say, on the background of yoga, yoga sort of stewarding the way. Ayurveda has got more and more popularity. And so finally, it's a word that maybe we've heard of, or just gently, in the supplement section, there's been something in our local health food store like Joanne's, or we've heard about it on the yoga mat. So Ayurveda is finally getting some entry into North America and to Western Europe. And here in Canada, when I started to offer consultations in Ayurveda, it was so very new, and most people didn't know what the word was or what it meant. And that's how Rasa Ayurveda was really born, was to bring the gift of Ayurveda from the East in a way that's really applicable to the lives of Westerners and especially to Canadians, because here in Canada, we're growing as really Canada's largest line of apothecary offerings in many ways. So yeah, Rasa offers everything from education to clinical offerings, consultations, and things with myself, as well as a whole apothecary of products, and all Ayurvedic. So that's often the question, what is Ayurveda? I don't know if you're asking me that also, Marissa.
Yes, of course. Dive into that, Tiffany. Tell us exactly what is, well, I'm sure we can't cover that all in one podcast, but maybe a summary of what Ayurveda is.
Yeah, for those of us who are kind of fresh to Ayurveda, maybe the most simple way I can say it is it's a holistic medicine. Like many other holistic medicines that we find from around the world, this holistic medicine found its roots in India. And so actually we find many of the same principles and many of the same understandings that we find also in yoga and meditation and some of these Vedic sciences that are becoming more exposed to a lot of us. And so Ayurveda is based upon the principles of the elements, understanding how each one of us has a unique constitution and a unique makeup of these elements, and how we can live in alignment, eat in alignment, engage in an alignment with those elements so that we can really be in our own naturalness. That's really what Ayurveda empowers us to do. And in that way, as all holistic medicines, I would say, and medicinal approaches do, it really offers us the tools not only for preventative medicine, but what I often call maintenance medicine, which means it assumes that our birthright is health. So it assumes that our birthright is that we already are in balance, that we already are given the gift of healthfulness. And how can we maintain that deepest alignment and naturalness, not prevent disease, as though there's an assumptive idea that disease is more natural than health. So Ayurveda really provides us those tools to stay in balance, to stay in homeostasis, to stay in the most radiant, optimized state that we possibly can in our lives.
So this is unique based on your genetic makeup, basically, on how you would fall into the different, well, I know them as doshas, but how does that come into Ayurveda and how people would understand the connection between the two of those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think doshas is the number one thing that we hear of when we hear of Ayurveda. Actually, recently, we're working with a new individual who's helping us to spread the word about Ayurveda in Canada and marketing and various things. And he said, the number one keyword that's searched is dosha quiz, especially. Everyone's wanting to know, what's my dosha? So dosha is sort of synonymous with constitution in Ayurveda. And what we actually call it is prakruti. Prakruti is your original constitution. And your original constitution, prakruti, means original creation, actually, how you were originally created. And the way we look at it in Ayurveda is that could be a specificity of how the elements play through you, and that each individual has a different organization of those elements, the way in which they're born. And I guess that's why we can see, Marissa, when we look around the world, that we have a mosaic of human beings. Everyone shows up physically different, energetically different, emotionally, mentally different. This is one of the things I love about Ayurveda and other traditions that are similar, that they really acknowledge the uniqueness of human beings. Like they really say, both we come onto this planet in our own unique ways and we have unique contributions, and also medicine and the way in which we stay in alignment is going to be unique to each person. So the doshas are three to come to understand them, but it takes a little more time for us to go through them. But these three doshas, as we understand them in Ayurveda, are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And Vata dosha is that which is predominant of the air and space elements. Pitta, predominant of fire and water elements, and Kapha of water and earth elements. So an individual who tends to have physically, but also emotionally, mentally, more air and ether, we would say, has more Vata predominance in them. And someone who, is more fiery, whether that's in body or mind, we'd say is more Pitta. And someone who is more like the earth or earth and water, has more of that grounded nature, whether it's in body or also body and mind, would be more Kapha. That's sort of simple how I'm explaining it in this moment. And then understanding that, we can also understand how to align our lives on various levels to keep ourselves in alignment.
How would you know, or what would be some indicators that would say maybe you're out of alignment of your dosha?
Yeah, so I suppose this is really commonsensical in many ways, Marissa, because a lot of people say, well, if there's a possibility of being different doshas, won't it mean that, we could each show up with these differences in our bodies that might look like an imbalance? But actually, all of us know what an imbalance is by whether or not we're feeling healthful and well. I mean, it's as simple as that. You can be uniquely manifesting in the world in different ways, but that way can still be very harmonious. Let's say it in that way. For example, someone can be spacey in their nature, but it can be sort of a spaciousness, a creativity, and enthusiasm. All of those things a lightness in body, but it's still all very balanced. And someone else can feel very grounded and rooted, and their body can be quite vital and solid in bone structure and also in adipose tissue, but it's still balanced. But either of those, if they're taken to extreme, someone might feel so spacey that they start to get scattered or memory loss or the body gets depleted. Versus the other one, someone might feel so grounded that they start to gain weight, or even, the bones start to, like bone spurs, they start to increase in the body, or those kinds of things show us that it's taken to an edge, right? It's taken to an extreme. So as you can see, those could be very different natures, but when in harmony, we know it, do we not? And when moved outside of ease, that's when we call it dis-ease, really.
So the main thing with the doshas is we want to find that balance, that harmony in the middle, where we're not doing too much and not doing not enough in the middle then.
Yeah, we could call it that on some level. When we start to get empowered in the knowing of our dosha, the knowing of our doshic makeup, which we can understand both from studying a bit of Ayurveda. It actually becomes quite commonsensical and intuitive. Like I often share with people that Ayurveda already lives within you. It's not something you need to learn from outside and then sort of supplant or plant into yourself conceptually. Rather, when you start to understand some of what Ayurveda codified, a lot of times what we'll say is, oh, of course, that makes sense, of course, right? So in that way, it's really just naming that which is already here. So for a lot of us, understanding that sort of Ayurvedic wellness means also just understanding that middle point, like you were pointing to, Marissa, like understanding when we're in balance, understanding when we feel our digestion is balanced or our mind is imbalanced. For us, for us truly, because that looks so different for each individual, looks really different. So it can be a lifelong path and a lifelong sadhana for all of us to really discover. Sadhana means like a practice, to discover what it is to be in that place of the middle, I suppose.
And is it possible for your dosha to change at any time in your life? Or basically, do you have one or two doshas that you are managing through your entire lifetime?
Okay, so we have these three doshas, vata, pitta, kapha, but we can have a makeup in which we are either more singular dosha, although all three need to live within us. Let's say it in that way. Every human being has to have all three of these because we have to have all five elements to be a full humanness. So all of those elements need to be here. And in that way, all three doshas still exist within us, but it's really what are we ruled by or what do we come first with? And some of us will be what we call more primary doshad, right, in our constitution. So pretty primary vata or primary pitta or primary kapha. A lot of us are dual doshad. So vata pitta, pitta vata, vata kapha, and so on. Or some of us are tridosha. That's a very, very unique constitution to be born in that way, to be tridosha. And so there's 7 possible kind of combinations that are there. But then when you ask the question, can that change throughout our lives? So our prakruti, our original dosha, our original constitution, our original creation never changes. So what is our naturalness that we're born as never changes. What can change though, what we call it in Ayurveda, is our vikruti, which means creation now. What's happening now? And that's when we start to see either we're really in alignment, vikruti is quite aligned to prakruti, and we're living in a harmonious, really healthful way, what we call in Ayurveda swasta, great health, or our vikruti is different. So those elements somehow have gotten askew in our system. So say we're an individual, like I was saying before, who had vata sort of primary at the forefront. And so those air and space elements were more forefront within our being. But all of a sudden, because of lifestyle, because of our diet, various things, maybe something has happened in our life, a big switch in our lives, another element starts to take over a little bit more. Say pitta has gotten very high and the fire element has gotten high. And that's when we start to see changes, and those changes especially in that there may be something manifesting as an imbalance or as a disease.
And for each dosha, there's different, not necessarily guidelines, but suggestions based on your lifestyle, your eating habits, and possibly your supplement routine based on your dosha, correct?
Absolutely. So in Ayurveda, we always speak of what we call the 3 chikitsa. Chikitsa means treatments or medicine. And so the 3 ways in which we can maintain, prevent, and cure, actually. So those 3. And the 3 ways are through diet, lifestyle, and also what we could call 5 sense therapy, but is often called herbalism. So, we might call it supplementation, but really in Ayurveda, we don't really believe in supplementation. It's more like we use 5 sense therapy or we use plant medicine through the 5 senses to help to bring balance. So diet, lifestyle, and 5 sense therapy. Those are the 3 ways that we maintain, prevent, and also cure.
Amazing. So Rasa's products are based on each dosha, correct?
Absolutely. So we have a whole host of products that are based on the doshas. So for example, we have a spice mix, which is both a digestive mix and it's also just a yummy thing to add to your food. But in the carrier of your food, it helps to balance the doshas. So for example, in those we have vata, pitta, kapha, and also tridosha. One which our tridosha tends to be good for, say the whole family, or good for someone if they're not quite clear on which dosha they are. We've made it so that it's applicable really for everyone. or someone who's tridoshic. But then we also have other products here at Rasa that are generally tridoshic. So for example, we have 12 different potions, we've called them, which are different herbal formulas. And we use those, of course, they have propensities for the different doshas, but we use those generally for all beings, let's say it in that way. Maybe an example, Marissa, we have like a liver cleanse potion, which I would use more often in pitta imbalances or in pitta prakruti, in pitta individuals. But at times I may use it, for example, in other constitutions as well.
So, with the products, can you give us a little rundown on the different kind of categories that people would be looking at in the Rasa Ayurvedic products?
Yeah, it's so funny when you ask me because I'm aware that we have about 105 products currently. And when Rasa began, as I said, it was because I was seeing people in consultation and I would make individual things. So oils, both internal and external. I would make also herbal formulas. I would make various things, concoctions, really, all these formulas individually devised for each person and what was happening. And then I would bring some from India back with me often every year because I spent some time in India. So I would bring things from India, or I would also bring them from some companies that I love in the US, but that was challenging over time as well. It was really challenging to get them here and costing. And I just kept being challenged by the lack of Ayurvedic apothecary or offerings and herbalism here in Canada. And that's when we started, really, was to offer some things that's really for a Canadian clientele that could, and for the Canadian population, so they could access Ayurveda. And so at the beginning, I thought we'd start with just a few things, but this is what felt necessary, these 105. And so we do have categories. I mean, we have more of our ingestibles. So those are things like we have a whole host of teas and ingestible warm drinks, like a golden milk and an Ayurvedic coffee, which is an herbal coffee replacement, an Ayurvedic cacao, which is a single source cacao with adaptogens in it, one of my daily favorites also. And then we have other ingestibles like the spice mixes I was speaking to. And then we also have these 12 different potions, everything from a nighty-night potion. Our most favorite is the Adaptolife, which is an adaptogenic, what we call a rasayana, a rejuvenative potion. We have a Mighty Man and a Wild Woman, which are for men and women's hormonal balance, and a whole host of potions that are there. So that's all sort of our ingestible side. And then we have more topical medicinal side. So we have body oils, which are called abhyanga oils, which are medicinal oils that you massage onto the body. It's a whole practice in Ayurveda. We have oils for hair, oils also for the nose and the ears. So there's a lot of oleation that happens in Ayurveda. And all of these are carriers of herbs. Like the nasal oil, I'm just consistently in awe of the testimonials that we get. It's called nasya, and the benefits that people are having, everything from, dark circles under the eyes to also cognitive health, ADD, ADHD, and children even. People are using it in, with their teenagers, or hair growth as well, or generally for memory loss. There's so many ways, and sinal health, allergies. So lots of ways in which we're noticing that some of those are bringing benefit.
The Nasya oil, actually, my partner's father has chronic sinusitis, and he was on lots of medication. He prescribed medication as well as over the counter. And I said, just try this, just give this a go and see. And a month later, he goes, can you get me another bottle of that, please? Can you get me another bottle of that? So I can attest to someone who is really not into any herbals or anything. Normally it's a prescription, and he loves it, and he uses it every single day.
Oh, I love hearing that, Marissa. See, I love it, especially when Ayurveda is entering into realms where people, they may not ever have been exposed to Ayurveda before. And they don't need to know really anything about the sort of conceptual Ayurveda, except that it works, something works. And that's what I really love hearing. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and then what else do we have? We also have other things like our whole facial care line. So I've also formulated, it's a 3-step facial care line, which is really unique to Ayurveda because our cleanser is what's called an Ubtan. And we have this in 4 different lines, like Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and Tridosha again. And the cleanser, this ubtan, is a powdering of different clays and herbs and flowers. And you actually wash it on the face mixed with a bit of water or mixed with a bit of milk or honey. You can use it as a face pack. And then it's followed by a botanical toner, as well as an elixir, which is like a serum, an oil that's put onto the face. And I love also hearing testimonials of how that's also working for people's skin. We have aromatherapy as well that we use as sacred essences, like roll-ons for the different doshas to bring balance. And then we have a whole host of what we call dinacharya products. And dinacharya means our daily routine. So sort of morning and evening ritual products. Like we have a dry brush and copper bottles and cups, which are excellent for drinking copper water out of, tongue scrapers, neti pots, all of these things that we suggest in Ayurveda. So a whole host of things are there, Marissa.
Amazing. Yes. And tongue scraping, if you are not on the tongue scraping routine yet, it is a must, especially now that we are masked. Like most people are noticing that there's definitely more bacteria buildup, more smell, possibly more candida. So it's the perfect time to be putting this into your routine every single day, just to get rid of all of that toxin that's building up and that you're breathing back in with being masked right now.
Oh, Marissa, I love that you're welcoming, and inviting people to recognize that, because that is a changing field that we have to recognize right now. And I would say, like the copper water, what we call tamrajal in Ayurveda, would also be really good for that right now, because it helps to purify the system, purify the mouth. And also we have an oil pulling oil, our gandusha oil, which is an oral rinse. It's an oil that you use within the mouth, and you swish it around for say 15 minutes, and sort of this can be very, very good during this time also, while we're having to wear masks.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. So, Tiffany, what does your normal, if we want to say normal, daily routine look like? Like, what does that look like as a yogi perspective?
So you mean for you or for me? What I
For,
do
for you, what do you do to inspire us?
So, what I really love as both an Ayurvedic practitioner and a lover is acknowledging the places where we all have our own edges. So one place where I have my own edges, and I think that's also beautiful for all of us to know, it's not like I'm doing it perfectly. I'm also trying in my own life. And that makes it, accessible for all of us. And my own edge is busyness. With all of the consultations that I have, and also teaching. Now I'm teaching a lot online with various online programs and teacher trainings and things. And then also running Rasa Ayurveda, all of those various things mean that my day gets more and more busy. And one of the principles of Ayurveda is definitely restful, mindfulness, and taking some times for rest and good deep sleep as well. And so that's one of the areas that I want to start off with by saying I could improve. That's a place where I could definitely improve. And I think we could all improve. There's a busyness that enters into some of our lives that really takes over. And it's really about choicefulness, right? So even amidst the busyness, I really, really try to stay focused on the bookends of the day and even that midpoint of the day. And this is something that I invite even my busiest clients and individuals that I work with to acknowledge. What are the bookends? So especially getting some routines into the beginning of the day and the end of the day, what we call our dinacharya, our sort of daily routine, but also our morning routine, and our ratri charya, our evening routine. And in my morning routine, I definitely like to follow, at least 12 to 15 of the kinds of things that we do in Ayurveda. So waking up, before the sunrise, and scraping the tongue and washing the eyes, doing some nasal oiling, ear oiling, body oiling before showering. And definitely each day, Marissa, I love to be able to sit down on my cushion. So to take some time for meditation, to take some time also for some mindful movement, even if we're not able to get an hour or 2 hours, to get even 15 to 20 minutes. This is what I offer to people. Even just, some conscious, mindful, even spontaneous movement. That's more aligned with yoga than obligatory sort of yoga. Let's say it in that way, to just really move into what it is to have this body. And then in the evening, also getting some time, whether it's on the cushion or to have some restful moments where we really shut off devices. If I really followed the lead of how many questions and various things I get on these devices, I could be on them right till I go to sleep every evening. And so there has to be also a choicefulness in that. And so I'd say that commitment is also a huge part of my daily routine. is that I say no at a certain time, and then I have time for dinner, and I have a time for loved ones and connection, and also a time for my own self connection, a little bit of restorative yoga. And I really love, some simple things like aromatherapy. So I use our roll-ons throughout the day. I use them also before I go to bed. I use the Vata sacred essence. It's really good for peaceful sleeps. And I also love, even just taking some time at night to do a little bit of nidra yoga. So nidra yoga is this yoga of sleep and deep relaxation. So even one of my favorite, recordings, and actually there's been some students like yourself who have done the teacher training with me, and they've recorded some beautiful nidra yoga. So sometimes I hop onto some of those. So trying to really get those bookends, and then especially when I say the middle point, that mid meal, really trying to focus on that mid meal, at least making that the most nourishing meal of the day. And I find that at least amongst, our lives that are increasingly busy and that can be increasingly scattered, it's a way that we can really implement Ayurveda in a doable way. Even starting the day with two of these things and finishing the day with two of these things, and focusing on having a really nourishing mid-lunch, midday meal, that can really help to bring a much more balance and ease into our lives, our bodies, our minds, our hearts.
So, for our listeners, what would be maybe 2 or 3 things that they could implement into their daily routine right now that would reflect maybe not necessarily a specific dosha, but something to do with Ayurveda, whether it is a dinacharya or it's drinking something or eating something? What's something that our listeners can do to start right now?
Yes. Okay. So why don't we talk about some of the ones that definitely are good for all of us? Like you were saying, you don't have to know your dosha. It doesn't have to be dosha specific. Really, just things that can benefit all of us. And you already pointed to a couple of them, Marissa. So one that I can mention before we go there is to wake up, if possible, around sunrise. Actually, this is given a name in Ayurveda. Like, it's so important. We call it prataratana, which means like really waking up with the rising sun, and to start the day with this sort of reverence, gratitude for the day. So that can be, it can shift everything. And I know there's like 5 a.m. clubs and these moms clubs that kind of inspire each other, because there's a lot known also about circadian rhythms, what happens when we wake up at that time of the day, vitamin D absorption. There's a lot of science that's also starting to back what Ayurveda already knew. So that's one thing that I could offer to all listeners, even if you can pull it back a little bit, and I find myself also tired sometimes in the mornings. So it doesn't mean that we don't get deep rest, maybe Sundays are days where we sleep in a little bit, but trying as much as you can to orient your schedule. So you wake up early and go to bed a little bit more early as well, not staying up so late. And then tongue scraping. So like you said before, tongue scraping takes 10, 15 seconds. I love it in that way. And we call that channel from the mouth all the way down to the anus. We call it the Parisha Vahashrota, which means the channel of waste. So when we're sleeping, both areas, both the mouth and the excretory organs, are trying to excrete any kind of stuff, any kind of toxicity that's been accumulated in the day. So if we can help ourselves by scraping the tongue in the morning, rather than re-ingesting some of the gunk, the bacteria, the various things that have been deposited on the tongue, you're going to notice both you'll feel fresh. Of course, this has dental hygienic sort of benefits, but it also benefits our digestion. It benefits candida or yeast that may be held in the body. So many things. And then the other thing that I would suggest in the morning that helps in the other way, so with excretion and stimulates also a full release, we can say in the morning, also through bowel movement, is to drink this copper-infused water. So we have copper cups, and we also have copper bottles, which I know you have at Joanne's, the copper water bottles. And leaving water, either a spring water or a well-filtered water, a good quality water, in your copper bottle or cup overnight, and then drinking that water after you've scraped your tongue and maybe done some other things, but scraped your tongue in the morning. It's a wonderful way to also improve our digestion, but also to eliminate and evacuate fully, to remove bacteria. It's antimicrobial. It's also very stimulating for the brain. There's so many ways in which copper has been studied for joint health, for skin health. So it's a wonderful way also to clear out that, waste channel also in the morning. So if there's anything I could suggest for a morning routine, those would be them. To wake up closer to sunrise, scrape the tongue, and drink some copper water.
Is there any issues with having too much copper or copper toxicity?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that people, of course, we know more and more about because many people had copper pipes and things in their homes, right? And so people often ask that question. So there's a relationship, as I'm sure you know as well, Marissa, this relationship between copper and zinc. So one of the main things we want to check into is if for some reason you have a zinc deficiency and you're trying to boost your zinc, copper can sometimes leach zinc from the body. So that would be the main reason. The other way that we get any kind of heavy metal toxicity, usually in our body, is when there's trace amounts of that heavy metal in foods, or not necessarily that it's been infused in a water, right? So, or pollutants in the air, or various ways in which this has happened. So usually we don't ever find from drinking copper water that someone gets copper toxicity. This is not something that happens, but it might happen in other ways in our lives that we've been exposed to those heavy metals.
Yes, yes. Would you say that there are maybe any other myths around Ayurveda or any other type of yoga meditation that you would like to address to our community?
Oh goodness, I'm sure there's lots of myths. I often focus on the hearing all the ways in which people are benefited and the positives, but we do get asked a lot of questions. What I find is that sometimes allopathy, sometimes Western medicine will say, there isn't scientific evidence to back this, right? So we haven't yet had scientific evidence that proves the effects of this. From my standpoint, Marissa, the exemplification of witnessing beings again and again and again in improved health, improved mind state, improved well-being is more than enough science for me. So that's always, a complex one for me, as well as, there may be one or two examples. Like I know, for example, with neti, there have been, so neti is this nasal rinse that can be done with a salt water. I know that there have been a couple examples of individuals getting a bacterial infection because they used waters in a specific area that had microbes. And then that traveled to the brain, and then that becomes the only thing that's popularized, right? Those few examples, and not the other millions of beings who have been improved and have also prevented, sinal allergies and various things through the use of neti. So it's always a bit difficult for me because there are a lot of myths often in the way in which, whether it's Ayurveda or other such holistic medicines, the way in which they might be approached from an allopathic standpoint. And we just kind of focus on the exemplification of all these human beings who are benefited. The other thing that I think is a myth that comes up around Ayurveda is that it belongs to a specific time or place, like that it's an ancient medicine that's, it is an ancient medicine that's 10,000 years old, we could say. Even before it was codified, it was shared from teacher to student or from teacher to beings, and they would bring it into their lives. Or that it's specifically Indian also. But what I want to say is that, as I said before, and this would even be recognized by Ayurvedic doctors in India, is that this is the naturalness of all human beings. It's just that it was codified as Ayurveda. It was written and called Ayurveda in a specific place, but really that it can be applied. And the Ayurvedic principles, and this is really what we try to do at Rasa as well, is we bring the Ayurvedic principles, but we also really recognize locality, seasonality. So we use herbs, for example, that are Western herbs, but in an Ayurvedic application. So it's for all beings, really, truly. And it's constantly also evolving with the time. Of course, we have to apply Ayurveda now very differently than Ayurveda would have been applied 2,000 years ago or even 50 years ago, I have to say, Marissa. And that's a myth, that it's something that doesn't apply now, or that it's, for a specific place, or that the food, the diet, and also the herbs are, not local, that they're more from India. Actually, that doesn't have to be the way in Ayurveda. And that's really what we're trying to do at Rasa Ayurveda, is to make it really so acknowledging of what I would say is the deepest Ayurvedic principle, which is that presence is the greatest medicine. So what is presently occurring? What's presently occurring, both in an individual's field, but also what's presently occurring in a collective field, on a collective scale. So even with what's happening now with COVID, how can we apply Ayurveda now to what's going on for human beings now?
I love that. I love that you say that, because I think that's across the board for a lot of different modalities, and making it accessible and then making it also suited based on the environment that we're in right now, which allows it to be more accessible for anybody wherever they are. So I love that Ross has been able to bring this gift to our community and across Canada, across the world, to make it accessible. Definitely things have changed over the several years, but making it accessible now, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, we're trying to do our best. We can only
Yes.
do our best.
Was this something that you always felt was going to be your field of work? Is this something that you knew you were going to birth into our world and give as a gift?
Absolutely not. I didn't, I really didn't, Marissa. When I was in my early 20s, I made my way to India to work in the development field. That was what I studied and what I loved, and working in sort of the charitable NGO field. And that's why I went to India. And I was sort of drowned, drenched, marinated in the gift of yoga and meditation first. And then Ayurveda started to enter in. And we have this term in the Vedic tradition, which is dharma. And dharma sort of means the river or the current of purposefulness. It's like how life wants us to move, how life asks us to really contribute and to serve in life. And I can say that it's really been a river and a tributary that I never imagined. And in that way, I'm constantly in awe. Let's just say that. It ends up surprising me consistently. I never imagined that Ayurveda would be the forefront of what I'm offering through, and it really is right now, I would say. Yoga and meditation, I still continue they still continue to be contenders and loves for me to offer as well. But Ayurveda and the way in which it comes through, Rasa Ayurveda and myself and Lisa also seems to really be of service. Let's say it in that way. And we're really humbled that it's of service. We don't see it as us, but instead we see it as a greater purpose that's asking itself to make its way through our hearts and our hands. And I have to say also through the various beings like yourself who are also helping to spread it, and Joanne's. We were so touched when we first were able to bring some of the apothecary items to Joanne's, and people would send us photos, saying, I saw Rasa at Joanne's, this is huge. And it continued to grow. And now I find myself speaking on many different podcasts and at conferences, and we're constantly in awe. So I never imagined this at all, Marissa, but I'm so excited that it is what is.
So are we. We are so blessed and so thankful that it has come into full effect and that we are able to offer those at Joanne's Place. So some things that we have, as you mentioned, we have the water bottles, got the copper tongue scrapers. We also have the tooth powder, which I love. It is such an amazing product. It's activated charcoal as well as various herbs which help fight bacteria, prevent cavities, and all of those things as well. We also have the Ayurvedic teas. So we've got the different dosha teas as well as the tridoshic one. I personally love, I can't remember exactly what it's called. So you can maybe mention this, is the cleansing and clarifying one.
Yeah, the Tulsi Cleanse and Clarify tea, which is a great detox tea.
Yes, that's a fantastic one as well. And we also have the coffee substitute one as well too, which is a very popular product.
Yeah, the Ayurvedic coffee is just the Ayurvedic coffee, also the golden milk. They just, as well as I would say the Adaptolife, those are kind of our top three products that just leap off of our shelves, and also any stockists like Joanne's Place, their shelves as well. And the Ayurvedic coffee, each time I gift it to someone or each time someone tries it, it's like I get the surprising reaction of, this is like actually like really really good. And I get this funny response like, wait, this is really tasty. You're sure this is good for me? What I love about it, Marissa, because over the years working with people on addiction, let's say, and also inclusive of coffee addiction, because it's sort of an allowed addiction. Let's be really honest about coffee and the consumption of coffee, especially in North America, that I noticed for so many individuals that removing coffee was a huge hurdle, or even lessening coffee was a huge hurdle. And of course, we know we have so many coffee shops also that we pass on a daily basis, so it's constantly in our face. And so really working with this and developing and formulating this coffee replacement, this Ayurvedic coffee replacement, was not just about providing something that would taste similar and that would feel like you still have that morning ritual, that rich ritual, but also because there are various coffee replacements out there. not just that it replaces, but we have put various herbs as well as shrooms, like we have chaga in this one, ramon nut, which is an amazing herb as well as adaptogenic herbs. So we've put rasayana, rejuvenative herbs. So you're actually not just replacing coffee in the morning, but you're getting a great cleansing benefit and also a deep nourishing and sort of relaxing anti-stress benefit, even in the way in which you start your day. So that's, I'm noticing some of the benefits that people can drink something that feels like coffee and almost be taking their herbal medicine in the morning. So it's a bit of trickery, let's say that.
Yes, yes. As I think a lot of people, I even know myself, will struggle with getting in all of the powders and the protein and this, unless you're having a smoothie and it's easy to put everything in. But most people will not miss their coffee. That's one thing that they won't.
Yes, it's true.
So there has been so much information in this episode, and I know myself, it's so inspiring. I've done the courses, I've done teacher training with Tiffany, as well as the Ayurvedic training as well. And every time I hear you speak, it's just inspiring and liberating. And you could have told me something already, and it's just so refreshing to hear it again. So I'm sure our listeners are going to feel incredibly inspired after listening to this episode, but they can take this one step further and they can learn a little bit more in depth about what Ayurvedic is by joining a training that you're offering in September. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, we have different offerings, but in September, especially, I would say, is our most foundational Ayurveda program. It's starting, this is the fourth or fifth time that I've offered it, and it's a 50-hour online program. So it starts September 9th. It's once weekly. So we have a 3-hour session once weekly. It goes over 16 sessions, and all of the sessions are live on Zoom. So it's a live course, which has been really important to me. So you can ask questions, you engage. Throughout the week, I give you a couple integrations as well to sort of embed and imbue the teachings and the understandings into your life. And then they're all recorded as well. So I even have some individuals, in Europe, for example, it might be a weird time zone for them, or across the world, we have some in New Zealand, Australia. And even if you're here in Canada and you work at that time, you can watch the recordings whenever you like, and you'll have all the recording links so you can go back to it again and again. The other thing we do, which I really love, is if someone has ever attended the 50-hour course, they can attend any future courses in its entirety if they feel to join again. So that's just sort of complimentary. The whole hope is to really share and spread Ayurveda. So in this 50 hours, it's really a foundational, I call it an introduction, but it's sort of beyond. I mean, you've taken it, Marissa, so you should feel really foundationally seated in Ayurveda and also in your own empowered wellness.
Absolutely. And although you're gaining all this knowledge and how to put this into your routine, you just learn so much about your own being and who you are and what you want to value and prioritize in your health and wellness. And it's really next level, I think, in a healing journey for a lot of people. So it's definitely a course that I would recommend people to enroll in, just so you learn something that you may not be aware is even a modality that you can use in your routine and how it can help you. It's fantastic.
Oh, great, Marissa.
And you get to also connect with an entire Sangha, which is really a huge blessing. And you get to meet new people or, connect with people in your community that you maybe have never connected with before as well.
Yes, that is a huge blessing. And I'm glad you highlighted that as well, because it's also a global Sangha. So I get people from all around the world, and a lot of people love the way in which they're able to connect, especially in this time when we're feeling maybe a little bit more isolated. Having the possibility to learn together, to share together, to be together, that is a real blessing as well. Yeah, it's true. And inspire together. So inspiring. I'm constantly learning from the exemplification of various individuals who hop on these courses and the example of their lives.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for absolutely everything that you've offered, not just in this podcast, but to our community and to the world. I speak for many when I say it is a true blessing to have contact with you and to be able to share this to our community. So I will tag all of the links on where you can learn more information on the upcoming course, as well as where you can connect with Tiffany on social media platforms. But I think we're going to wrap up this episode here. And I just want to thank you so much for being a part of this journey with Joanne's Place and our podcast, and for connecting in our community.
Oh, thank you so much, Marissa. I'm so grateful both to yourself and also Joanne's Place for hosting us in this way and for just sharing in the community in all the ways in which you do, for being this hub really of wellness and support and communal coming together. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share on social media that you're listening to the Wellness on Purpose podcast.